Well, in the my dealings with John Mack and his much more positive, much more hopeful outlook for this, this is what I think happens. In a quick example, he told me once that he had had 3 different people he had worked with who had come to him. One had been a salesman, one had been, you know, some other job. They were just simple, they were typical jobs. And they were, these people were in their 30s. In their 30s, as I remember. They had come to him. They were very frightened and very confused, as everybody is at the beginning of their looking into their experiences. I mean, virtually everybody who comes to me is confused about what happened, and they're frightened. And they had had these jobs. And he said within a few months, he said these 3 people had quit their jobs and when they realized what was going on in their life and what the aliens were here, quote unquote, to help with the environment, these 3 people had quit their jobs and had taken jobs to help the environment in ecology. And he was very pleased about this. And I said, well, John, it seems simple to me. If the aliens had these people for 35 years, and they were confused and frightened, and they were working at everyday jobs, and you had them for 3 months, and after that time they felt better and they changed their jobs, I said, who gets the credit, you or the aliens? I mean, the essential point is that it was his intervention that had the effect to make those changes in them. So that's a human intervention. That is not something that's coming from up there. If they had not met John Mack, they would have continued confused and frightened in their regular jobs. So I think that the intervention and the interpretation of the investigator has a tremendous amount to do with how well the person does with the experience. And my point always, and where I differ with John, is I don't see those good things flowing from the aliens to us. My feeling is that the individual has his own spiritual, her own spiritual resources. And once they begin to remember in detail what's happened to them and realize that they are strong and they have survived these experiences, because obviously they have survived them, they begin to feel empowered. They begin to understand, for instance, if they have had fears, people can't sleep at night, if they have to have all the lights on or something. And suddenly now they understand why they have had a lifetime of sleep problems. They don't blame themselves for it. You know, usually the abductee thinks there's something the matter with me, I'm strange because I have to have all the lights on or whatever it is. The person begins to feel better about himself or herself. The abductee meets other abductees and realizes that those people sitting there in the support group are bright, attractive, interesting people who were pretty emotionally together. They survived, I can survive. And therefore, the transformation that takes place really comes from within and from the help of the investigator and the other abductees. But then the fact that the person has had these strange experiences out there and has seen the universe in a way that none of the rest of us have, that gives that person a personal advantage and resource. He or she has been through some really rich and complex experiences. And because now you know why the fear has been there, why you know you've reacted the way you have, you can somehow, I think, survive as a stronger person. But I think it's due to really your own human resources and the human spirit around you, rather than that the aliens are feeding that into you.
So you don't feel that there is any chance that eventually some humans are originally half-bred or partially human and partially alien?
About the hybrid thing. I certainly think that's possible. This is an issue which is extremely sensitive for this reason. Supposing you have a family, and supposing there's a child in that family, and that child has some very unusual gifts that the parents don't seem to have, whether they're psychic gifts or intellectual gifts or something. Let's say that the husband doesn't want to accept any UFO experience at all, and the wife embraces her own experiences as having been real. Then supposing you take the child and test him, DNA testing, and find out that he's slightly different than his parents. What's the father going to think? Is the father going to think that perhaps he's not the father of the child? And since he doesn't accept any UFO experience, that maybe his wife has had an affair. I mean, what if there's a falling out with a child, and a parent in anger said, "You're not even human. You're, you know, the reason you're acting this way is because you're part alien." I mean, all of the emotional issues that can come up there are so difficult that I feel I haven't wanted to explore that possibility. I haven't wanted to do any genetic testing. There's a chromosomal mapping that they do. I haven't wanted to do any of that because I think it could cause a lot of problems in the family. And the ultimate goal of this is you want people to feel better about themselves and their lives. And if getting more information is going to wreck a marriage, stay away from it.
What happens with Skelly since she found that she had a brain tumor?
With whom? Which one?
Skelly. I'm talking about X-Files.
Oh, the X-Files, right, yes.
Because I don't understand why they're shifting. No, I do understand, but I want you to answer eventually to this question. Why they are shifting to a situation in which the principal in the series has been taken for sure, for granted, that she was struck by the aliens. She got stuck in a situation in which she's included in a, not therapy, but a bunch of female subjects who are sharing with her the same experience. And then 1 year later, we understand that something really fishy happened, but now she has brain tumor. This is the actual level of the series in Italy, the actual episode.
Right.
That raised, I know that raised a lot of
yes.
audience anyway
yeah.
in the United States. Do you think that X-Files is giving and taking away reality and
well,
root from the point?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing to remember is the X-Files is fiction. It is in there to make money and to have put the main characters in peril from time to time, have, you know, bad things or ominous things happen. It's a fictional presentation. And you see, in actual fact, I think to bring in the idea of a brain tumor or cancer or something, as they did in one of their chapters, as if that's the outcome of abductions, is, I think, of course, very dangerous, because at first it's not true. I mean, I don't have any cases myself where it would seem that anybody who had UFO experiences were given something like cancer as a result. I mean, I've had abductees who have had cancer, but it seemed to be the normal population. I don't know what the X-Files is playing with all this material to keep, you know, obviously the writers have to keep the public interest, so they have to put their characters through all kinds of issues. I don't think there's anything to be, any important point to be made about that, actually.
About healings, do you have how many subjects do you study?
Well, see, in my situation I've worked with 600 people roughly, well, a few more than that. That's in past 21 years, 22 years. You run into that occasionally where a person is healed from something. But it's far from regular. In other words, all kinds of people have ongoing physical problems that are not healed. So it isn't as if an abductee is automatically granted some kind of healing. That would be nice if that were the case, but that isn't the case. And one abductee remarked to David Jacobs that when she was healed of a particular chronic chest problem, He said, do you feel grateful? And she said, well, I don't know, because I don't know whether this was a gift to me or whether this was just equipment maintenance. Meaning they were taking care of the way you would heal a lab rat that's got a problem, because you want a healthy specimen to continue. So we don't really know. I've never seen any signs of healing as a regular issue in this. It comes up from time to time.
Let's talk about Linda Napolitano, because we...
Linda Cortile.
Linda Cortile, yeah, Linda Cortile, exactly. Does she speak very good Italian?
No. She speaks some Italian. She was born in the United States. Her father was born in Italy, and his Italian was, I mean, his English was not terrific. Linda's husband, Steve, was born in Italy, and his English is, of course, very good. But since Linda was born here, she knows some Italian, but not...
But can you recollect her experience?
Well, this is such a complicated story. But Linda was one of hundreds of people that come to me. She came to me as a result of reading Intruders originally, and it had to do with a bump on the side of her nose and a scar that was discovered that was really upsetting to her after she read my book. And I had started working with her, and we were looking into earlier experiences using hypnosis from her childhood and her youth. At that point, she was in her 40s when I dealt with her, early 40s. But she thought that these experiences were over. They were old experiences. And she called me one morning in November 30th, 1989, to tell me something had happened the night before. And what she consciously remembered, and this was the first time of this kind of memory, was that she had opened her eyes, sensing a figure in the room, and there was a small alien figure at the foot of the bed. She had thrown a pillow at it, and then become terrified. Her arms had frozen at that point, because she thought, now they're going to hurt my children. And she's always involved with protecting the children. She didn't remember anything more that happened after that, consciously, except a certain little flashes. She remembered sitting on a table and hands going up and down her back, like their vertebrae. She remembered seeing this white fabric come up over her face. And at any rate, we did a hypnotic regression session, and she remembered having been floated out the window, 12th story, off the ground, which had happened in other cases in her experience, also with the children. She remembered being lifted up into a craft, and then she's on a table, and various things happen. That was the end of it. I have cases like that all the time. I probably hear about one possible UFO abduction in New York City every week. And we've always assumed these things couldn't be seen, that they're somehow veiled, hidden, invisible, or whatever. They have to be. I have abductions from Rome. I have abductions from London. This can't be if it could be seen. I mean, somebody's going to look up and see a UFO and people floating in the air. But it never happens. And yet there's evidence that the abduction took place. Well, what happened in this case was I heard from two men who turned out to be government agents 15 or 16 months later, describing the fact that what I ultimately found out, that they had been driving from the United Nations down to Governor's Island to take helicopters out with some important political figures. 3:15 in the morning, their engines all died in their cars. There were between 3 and 5 cars. And as they're sitting there wondering what's happening, suddenly this light goes on above this big building, which turned out to be Linda's building. It was a UFO hovering with all of its lights on as if it's attracting attention. To their horror, they see the people in the cars, see these figures fly out the window, 12 stories up, all curled up, fetal position. They come flying out, they unroll, and then they go up into the craft, and the craft goes zooming across the automobiles of these important figures, and it was seen to go into the East River, right into the water. But meanwhile, as this electromagnetic effect evidently hit the cars of these important figures, it was evidently affecting other cars of just civilians driving at 3:15 in the morning. So I have people in 2 other cars at 2 other locations who also described their cars stopping. And one of the witnesses on the Brooklyn Bridge said that when these lights went on, these little balls of things came out of a window, and she saw them unroll. She said it was so real that it looked fake, and she said, I thought I was watching a film being made, a movie. She thought it was a special effect. She didn't know. Anyway, the basic point about this is that apparently the UFO occupants staged this to be deliberately seen, because one of the important political figures in the car was extremely important in terms of international politics. And it's almost as if the aliens arranged this, that when the cars were there, that's when they stopped them. Then they abducted Linda, who was really, in a certain sense, a prop, like a theatrical prop. She wasn't really important in this sense, except to be seen. And what I ultimately learned is that they also abducted these 2 government agents and this extremely important political figure. They were all 3 taken that night. And they were taken to a beach area where Linda was being used as if she's with the aliens to sort of demonstrate that they were concerned with the ecology of the Earth. This is what I refer to as alien co-option. She was saying to this important political figure and these agents, look what you've done to this planet. Meaning, as human beings, look what you're doing. She herself has no ecological interest. She said, I eat meat, I have a fur coat, you know, all the things that are improper. But so in her real life, she's not that way. But here she is, sort of being used to rail at and make the point to these political figures that she and the aliens are here to help this planet. It's an incredibly complex story because it goes on with the reactions of the various figures in this case. All in all, there are roughly 20 people who were involved in this case as witnesses to one part or another of it. And what makes this case extraordinarily important, first of all, as evidence, is that there's no way that this case has any psychological explanation because of all the other witnesses. Either it happened exactly as the people are remembering it, or it was a hoax orchestrated by all of these 20 people who've gotten together for some reason and have memorized long plans, long dialogues, have invested a huge amount of money in it, etc., for no apparent reason. And with the psychological testing we've done and with the interviews I've done with all these various people, I have absolutely no doubt that a hoax just isn't even possible. So that means this happened because now we don't have any psychological ground to stand on.
Sorry. What's the name of the important figure of Perez de Cuellar?
The situation in this case is that the important figure whom I have met with in the presence of, unfortunately, of a reporter, and I received a letter from him and so forth. This man had said to me that if his name were used, he would deny that he had the experience. Now, that means for me to say who this person is or isn't going to help anything. On top of which, if I were to say, bring this person out and say, yes, it was so-and-so, whomever, it was so-and-so, and he's the one, and he's denying it and so forth, but at any rate, and I have then a lot of other evidence that I didn't publish in the book to identify him. If I were to do that, what if at this very moment there are several political figures who are considering calling me, perhaps even a general who was involved with Roswell or something, who has seen the bodies, is thinking, I want to talk to Budd Hopkins privately because he keeps his word. I would be, in a certain sense, undoing all the confidence that I have built up over the years. So I can't say.
In fact, it looks like it's almost the same situation where Santilli got stuck with the cameraman.
Well, this can happen. I think that it's been central to the UFO phenomenon from the beginning. There have been all kinds of people. And this, I mean, Roswell, you can name all kinds of other situations where generals and very important people have come forward and said, given information and said, I want this information out. This is what the third man said to me in a letter, that they wanted this information out. But please do not use my name. And this has been a problem every researcher has had from the beginning.
Did you meet with Daryl Sims?
Oh, I know Daryl Sims, yeah.
What do you think about it?
Well, I don't think that's something that we should be talking about other researchers on this.
No, let's say so, that the implants are substantial parts of the evidence, physical evidence of the abduction phenomenon, and that somebody has made these extractions or whatever surgeries performed on different subjects. Do you think that this is a way that we have to pursue in order to get to certain new evidence?
Well, certainly the issue of implants is extremely important. There's no doubt about it. The problem, of course, is when you actually retrieve an object, then everything, the whole scene shifts to what properties does that object have? Is that something that could not be, science would agree could not have been produced on Earth? And therefore, though I still haven't seen any analyses of objects that Dr. Lear has recovered. I haven't seen any analysis of them. But the issue of the analysis of these objects is extremely important. Extremely important. If the objects, they could still be an alien implant, but look like everyday material. And therefore, they would be rejected by science as any kind of evidence. Now, what I have in two cases, which I find very important, is a radiological report by the radiologist in a hospital of a metal object deep in someone's brain. And I will show x-rays during my talk, x-rays showing one of these objects in the brain of a girl, and this happened actually in Italy. The point about that being down in the brain is a neurosurgeon has told me that object, which you see in the x-ray, could not have been put there by us. And we can't remove it either because of where it is. The thing is with Roger Lear, Dr. Lear's removed objects, they were from the hand or the foot, where a scientist would say, well, you can step on some metal and you can get a piece of metal in your foot. Therefore, it's important what that piece of metal is made out of. That's central. But at least when you see the metallic object in an x-ray inside a head, it's in a place where if there's no hole in the skull and there's no easy way for this thing to have been put in place, no scar in the skull, you have something that I think is also pretty strong evidence. So I think implants, the radiological evidence of implants deep in the brain are going to be extremely important if we could line up groups of x-rays that show the same object.
Okay, last question. Six fingers aliens. Did you ever met anybody talking about that? Because in Italy we did.
No, I've never run into reports of six fingers. Much more often four, or sometimes even three. I have done some studies of some alien hands. I've collected some drawings that people made years ago. I've never run into anything with six fingers. Now, one of the problems, again, back to the Santilli film, and this is what's so strange about it, is that because it doesn't conform to what aliens are universally believed to look like. As a matter of fact, at my support group, virtually everybody said, that doesn't look like anything I saw. little fat belly and muscular, and a sort of more human-shaped head, and so forth, and the fingers. The problem is, if you make a hoax, you should try to make the hoax look like everybody's recollection, and it doesn't. So the very fact that it doesn't look right, in a strange way, adds to its reason for possibly being taken seriously. It's almost a perverse way of viewing it. But I've used the example that if a painter were going to forge a painting by Van Gogh, he wouldn't forge a painting of a naval battle, because Van Gogh never painted a naval battle. It would look strange to start with. He would forge sunflowers, say. So if you're going to do a fake alien, to make it have 6 fingers that no one's ever reported, and a differently shaped body than anyone's reported, is already to look weird and fake. So why would you spend a lot of money to make something that doesn't look right? Was there a certain alien type that is very, very rarely encountered that represents that body comes from a certain species or race or something? Who knows? But it always bothered me that it doesn't look right, because that works against it being a hoax in a strange way.
Last of the last questions. These little creatures were described already in the Majestic 12 documents as biological extraterrestrial entities, EVs, okay? And eventually like little robots, biological robots. Do you think that the Greys can be biological robots?
Well, when you ask any question about a hugely advanced technology that could float you at this moment right through that wall and take you up into a craft, and nobody at San Marino would see you, that's already a technology that you have to say they can probably do anything else they wanted to do. So I certainly would never say that they couldn't create some kind of biological robot. That would certainly seem possible. That these things seem to be living, sentient beings, though, the way they're described would fit more a living creature than, say, an artificially constructed robotic creature that has biological components. But I have no way of knowing. We now have, a computer which can beat the world's chess champion. So where biology and artificial constructions intersect is an area which is wide open right now.
The last of the last, clones.
Clones? Well, it would certainly seem that with their technology, cloning could be something that is operating, that they are cloning people. You see, the thing to understand is that if you take cells from a 12-year-old child and clone those cells and develop another child, it'll be identical to the other one, but it'll be 12 years younger. So you'll never have two that look exactly alike that are the same age, unless the cloning was done at the very beginning, in which case you have like an identical twin. An identical twin is a clone, really, when you think about it. I mean, it's the original cell split in half, and so you've got two absolutely, totally identical cells developing into fetuses. So it would seem to me that cloning is highly possible. Also, I have to say, and this is the most disturbing thing maybe of all, I think there's very good evidence that hybrids that may be 1 part alien and 7 parts human, just say, that would look very much like us, may very well be actually living on this earth right now. And they may have certain powers, to telepathic powers, to read another's mind. They may have powers of dematerialization, etc. And the fact that they may actually be existing right now, buying postcards in San Marino. This is certainly a possibility for which there's evidence.